Okay, we're at the downdraft table, and I'm going to take a little break from the spray booth action and give you just some pointers on how I sand the Ilva finish and some of the strategies I use. Number one, the neck I always sand by hand, and I'm going to use 320 grit, and I use the 3M product, 320 grit, that's called Free Cut Gold. I believe StuMac does sell it, but it's a good long-lasting paper. The other thing too is that you'll find that sanding polyurethane is really easy. It's almost like sanding drywall compound. It powders up really easy. It doesn't clog the sandpaper, so you're not going to go through a lot of sandpaper. The other thing is with the body, number one is I took the holder off that is on the freeform holder. And that's just so I can really get in this area and sand this area here. The other thing I do is I leave the protector. In this case, it's a balloon pressing up against a 1-quart deli lid container. And I just want to keep as much of the sanding dust out of the body, just because it keeps it makes it a lot easier to clean it up at the end when you're setting up the guitar and getting it ready for either yourself or a customer. Now, as far as sanding goes, I use a combination on the body. I use two sanders. I use a 5-inch pneumatic sander, and for this, I switch over to a product that's made by Merca called Abranet, and it's kind of a mesh abrasive, but the reason I use it is because it has complete flow through or through dust extraction. So if you hook a sander up to this and you run it on your pneumatic, it will just take all that fine powder out with it. I won't use the vacuum with it on this because I have my downdraft table, which will catch all the sanding dust. For the sides, which are a little bit too big for the sander, I use a 3-inch pneumatic sander. You can buy these off of Amazon. They're not expensive. They're between 100 and 200 bucks, depending on the quality of the one that you buy. With this one, what I liked about this particular model was it's oilless. So it means that you never have to oil it. And that's a good thing with finishing or sanding finishes, because if you over oil these things, a lot of that oil that you use will come out through the muffler and the exhaust and get on the finish. And if you have to apply another coat of finish, you may have a big surprise. So, as I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 5-inch sander. I'm going to sand the top and the back with this, and I'm going to stay away from the edges. The reason you want to stay away from the edges is typically the finish is thinner at the edges. So I'll just sand up to about 1 inch away from the edges, and then I'll use a block with some sandpaper and sand the edges by hand. That's one of the cardinal rules of finishing, is that you really, when you're sanding back, you want to stay away from the edges as much as possible. And that's the other reason that I also use this 3-inch sander on the sides, because the 5-inch sander just has a tendency, unless you keep it absolutely dead flat, it will run through the edges. And well, if that's towards the end of the finishing process, you're going to have to go back and recoat that. This sander, you still want to be careful with it and just kind of work it, but you'll see. So I'm just going to take a couple shots, a couple kind of clips, if you will, of me sanding this guitar, and we'll pick it up after it's sanded, and we'll get to the finishing stage, or the stage of final clear coats. Pressure's running. I have a downdraft table, so I won't be wearing a mask, but it may not be a bad idea to grab a mask because there is some residual dust that's created. So let me get rid of these. I'm going to run over and get a mask. I'll be right back. So I want to show you what I'm aiming to do. With the sander, you notice I stayed away from the edges, but I want to sand this surface until it's dead flat and there's no texture left from either the spray operation or from raised grain. And it's really easy to see that. You can see that in some areas there's some shiny spots which will need some more work, but there's one area right there that's pretty dead flat. So you want to do that to the back. You want to do it to the top. Once again, stay away from the edges and do those by hand using a small dual density sanding block, is what it's called. I buy these again from Bunka, and do the edges by hand. As I mentioned in the prior clip, if I do get some gaps, they'll show up with white powder. And before I use the glue boost on there, and I'll be using the orange label with the accelerator, I want to remove that dust. Make sure you remove that dust before you put the glue boost in. So I'll do kind of a quick sand like I just showed you, kind of see where the areas I need to add the glue boost in. And then I'll add the glue boost, kick it with the hardener, and then I'll flat sand everything else. If I have to do any more little minor touch-ups later, I'll do that. But pretty much that's it for the top. Now, so the neck I'll sand by hand using that little Mirka dual density sanding block I told you about. These are sold by Mirka. You can find them on Amazon or Mirka online store. It actually is sold in a bigger one like this, but I just cut it down to use the smaller one. What's important that you need to know about these is it's called dual density because one side is hard, one side is soft. Use the hard side when you're trying to flatten something. Use the softer side when you're trying to flatten but on a curved surface. Okay? So the flat side will be used when I'm sanding the back of the peg head, the front of the peg head, each side here, down here a little bit, this here, and then of course the heel cap. And then as I get to the barrel of the neck, I'll switch it over to using the softer side, just so I don't have a tendency to run through. So let me sand the body, let me finish it up with the body sanding and the neck. We'll put it back in the spray booth, show you what it looks like before we apply the final clip. Over and out. Okay, just a couple of tips during the sanding process. One, if your paper does load up, this is actually pretty easy to remove. I just take the sandpaper and using a microfiber cloth or something like that, just swipe it on there and you can actually clean that sandpaper out. Same thing on the sander. I'll just take it and kind of hold it down. Or what I do if I'm in a hurry, and this makes my wife crazy, is I'll just clean it on my jeans. It's also a really easy way to get a nice pair of those sanded through type of jeans that you have to pay like $100 extra for if you get them from Levi's. So just buy the normal 511s and do this a couple of times. You're there. So anyways, just during the sanding process, I just wanted to point that out because I know that like these helpful tips that I've kind of learned over a couple of decades of doing this are really helpful and may not be so intuitive to you guys. So let me get back to finishing this sanding of the body and the neck, and we'll get it all set up in the spray booth and show you what it looks like. Okay, now tip number 2. I told you that we had a little gap up here that needed some attention. I already went ahead and I put a little bit of glue boost in there and hit it with the accelerator. Use the orange label, which is the thinner glue boost fill-in finish. And what I used to use was I would, after that hardened up, I would use a little razor blade scraper and then I would hit it with sandpaper. I don't do that anymore. It's a little bit, you know, kind of a hassle to make the razor blade and use it and all that stuff. So Eagle Abrasives makes a product called Toll Cut. It's a repair kit. It's sold in a box with some sticky-on little sheets of very fine sandpaper, and it's used typically during the final buff out. We may revisit this product later on. But inside that kit are these two blocks, a curved one like that, and then a square one like that. And these are just the right hardness to flat sand that glue boost using 320 grit sandpaper without cutting through the surrounding area. It's just a simple matter of sanding until the gap is gone, and then pretty much you're done. You're ready to go. So that's tip number 2. Toll Cut, the repair kit, those little square blocks are absolutely indispensable for leveling glue boost. After I flat sand, all the texture is gone and looks no shiny spots or anything, I'll take my 320 grit, or not my 320 grit, but my maroon 3M Multiflex, and I'll go over the entire body and top. And what that does is that evens out the scratch pattern from your sanding, just in case you may be going across the grain, not with the grain, for whatever reason, and try and get into a tight area. But I always come back with this. Also, the Scotch-Brite is much easier to handle on a curved surface like the sides. You can see that over here. And I'll just go over the entire body. It's also a really good product to use on something like this arm bevel, which is very three-dimensional, and I don't want to risk using a sandpaper because you might cut through. So it's a good product, and I use a lot of it here in the shop. So I'll finish sanding the neck with the Scotch-Brite and the body. We'll mount them back onto the holders, and we'll see you back in the spray booth.